So the title of this talk is The Nonsense I Was Taught in Relativity Part 1. It was many decades ago that I was taught relativity, and it was of course nonsense. I suppose I didn't really realise it at the time. It was later research that showed what I'd been taught was nonsense. Presumably the same sort of nonsense is still being taught to physics students today. What gets taught is a lot of math manipulation and how to do calculations, and that need to be done properly in order to pass exams. When you actually look at the theory itself, it's nonsense. If you can just concentrate on learning to get the maths right for the exams, then that diverts most people from realising the theory is nonsense. And what I mean by the theory is not necessarily what Einstein meant by the theory, because when I look at what Einstein says, it's been misinterpreted and mistranslated. It's just the theory that's been taught today that is nonsense. So as I pointed out in my video entitled Mythology of Flight, this is what is reported. Scott Eberhardt, a professor of aeronautics at the University of Washington, where he teaches a popular introductory class in the typical aeronautics curriculum. He said students are showered with complex equations but are never given an intuitive understanding of what lifts an airplane. Most of the students who graduate today don't have a fundamental understanding because we haven't taught them that. And so students are taught some maths about flight, but not taught about understanding. And this applies to other science subjects, not just to flight, and also includes relativity. This is how those taught a science subject can then form myths about what they have been taught. So things seem to be reduced to this meme, and it's sometimes attributed to Richard Feynman, but it's arguable, maybe it's somebody else. The quote is, "Shut up and calculate," and it basically means just do the maths and give up trying to understand the theory. So let's now look at what I was taught about relativity, and this is the relevant thing. This is the source of what I was taught, relativity. It's Open University. Unfortunately, can't deal with this in just one video, and have to deal with it in a series of videos, because those who teach relativity just pile on the nonsense. There is the initial nonsense, followed by layers and layers and more nonsense piled on top. Thus, this is part 1. So the Open University booklet starts, Introduction, and it says, when Einstein proposed the special theory of relativity in 1905, his deductions were based on two postulates, two fundamental principles that seemed to be true. Those two assumptions led Einstein to a new view of space and time, a view that was rapidly accepted by the scientific world. And I query that, and it's not the case as far as I'm concerned. It was not rapidly accepted by the scientific world. As per Wikipedia, criticism of the theory of relativity of Einstein was mainly expressed in the early years after its publication in the early 20th century on scientific, pseudoscientific, philosophical or ideological basis. Though some of the criticisms had the support of reputable scientists, Einstein's theory of relativity is now accepted by the scientific community. So what you note by that, it was criticised in the early days, and it's an ongoing criticism of it by certain people. And of course the interesting thing is really the scientific context of that criticism. So when Open University says that was rapidly accepted by the scientific world, that's glossing over things. There was a lot of criticism and it's wanting to ignore that. And that's the general tactic used by those teaching relativity: ignore, stroke, omit certain issues. It doesn't want to get, this Open University doesn't want to go into the issue that there is a great deal of criticism against relativity. And so in the case of here of omitting to mention the criticisms, they can present the force front that there are no criticisms. And that is Open University, as I have brought up the issue of why don't alternative theories to relativity get mentioned when relativity is taught, and the reply is that the course is about teaching relativity and not teaching alternatives. So they've developed a tactic of ignoring the background from which relativity arose. Skipping now on to the next relevant bit from Open University, it says, although this unit, which is the booklet, does not follow Einstein's work in detail, it does have the same overall approach. So my note on that, it's not presenting relativity in the way Einstein presented it in 1905 with this paper on the electrodynamics in moving bodies. And if you look at that paper, as I've done, then you can easily reach the conclusion that there are anomalies with what Einstein says with what is now being taught. It's like they tried to patch up the mistakes that Einstein made, which I call moving goalposts. They have made amendments and alterations to relativity, issues I've dealt with in previous videos. But here in the Open University course, it's another area they are going to gloss over and omit and present force front that everything in relativity is the same as when Einstein presented it. Next relevant bit, which is said by OU, special relativity is a beautiful logical theory. I disagree with that. What they try to present as logical is just an attempt to tidy up things from what Einstein wrote. Again, something they will omit addressing. And so on to the next section of the booklet. It says, this is section 2, the constancy of the speed of light, and 2.1, what is meant by the speed of light. And this is where the problems properly start. Whatever is supposed to be meant by constancy of the speed of light ends up as a confusing mess. The relevant paper I'm going to refer to is this one. It's called 2 Myths About Special Relativity, and I'm referring to the myth about the constancy of the speed of light from that paper. And the paper says this: question, does the phrase the constancy of the speed of light have the same meaning today that it had when Einstein used it in 1905? And the answer is no. Today the primary meaning of the phrase is that given a specific burst of light, the burst speed is measured to have the same numerical value in all inertial frames. That is, the speed is constant with respect to changes in the reference frame in which it is observed. So what we note from that, the constancy of light speed has changed its meaning from when Einstein used it in 1905. Thus, when the Open University falsely presents that it's dealing with the same relativity as Einstein, that is an indication it's going to omit mentioning or dealing with the constancy of speed of light changing its meaning. So to properly deal with relativity, it is too complicated a subject, hence why there's all this dumbing down when teaching it. But dumbing it down and not acknowledging that it's been dumbed down to the students results in the students learning the subject, getting completely the wrong idea of the subject. Hence what is taught is nonsense. And now I hope to carry on in part 2 and other parts, building upon what I've just said here. But really, you can see the subject is a mess already from the first page of the booklet from Open University. When you initially introduce the subject and having trust in the people that are teaching you the subject, they just sort of really abuse that trust and gloss over a lot of issues, omitting relevant bits and trying to present a false front to you so that it's dumbed down and makes it seem easier to understand, but really it's a complete distortion of relativity. So that's the end of this little video. Thank you.